welcome to Breaking Down Bergman, and this week we're going to take a look at Summer with Monika.
Jag orkar inte. Nu är han dålig igen. Hans mage.
Hur ser jag ut?
Bra.
Syns inte vad vi höll på med?
Nej då, gubben ser inte så bra utan glasögon. God kväll. Så det är Monika.
Yes, this rapturous little feature, Bergman's 12th, very interesting film because
It's really highly controversial, at least it was at the time. There's a whole back history here about the US release being more of a nudie film than an actual Bergman film. But we'll get into that in a bit.
yeah, nudie film in the 50s. Whoo, look out!
First, let's sort of talk about the background of this movie.
Yeah, the movie is it's a project that Bergman really enjoyed. He got to be a creative driver on the film, as well as it did have an intention to have public appeal. So it's partially based on a popular fiction novel at the time, and Bergman adapted some of the elements of it to his own liking. Just as a quick synopsis, we have a young couple who meet, instantly fall in love, it's kismet, they're discharmed with their own social standing and how hard the world is, so they decide to run away for the summer and off into the wilderness and to just live life by their own rules.
Now they're hopeful at this point, they think everything's
It's perfect,
ideal.
it's heaven,
Yeah.
of course, we're in love.
But not quite.
Not quite. She gets pregnant, big surprise, and they decide to return back to the city after the summer in order to, re-enter society, but alas, all goes to hell.
Now, what's interesting here is that Bergman has sort of dealt with this before in a couple of his past films, as we've addressed. The happy couple walks into the distance, and it's sort of left ambiguous. Are they going to remain happy? Knowing how Bergman thinks, probably not, but the movie doesn't actually answer it.
No, we just fade to black.
Right. In this case, there is no fade to black, and instead we get to see that continuation of the devolving relationship. And I think that's really interesting. Of course, the critics also had quite a lot to say about this. They didn't like the sexual aspects of the film. Bergman had some nudity in the movie. I mean, when we watch it now, it doesn't seem all that risque. I think there's like a little bit of breast and a little bit of bum.
Side boob.
Yeah, that's about it. A lot of people took it as it was on the screen. They didn't go into the depth of the film, and when we were watching it and sort of discussing it afterwards, we initially did, we noted that it really is about the depth of this film.
The interesting thing with the film, though, and the way that, critics were conflicted about it because, they criticized Bergman for portraying Monika in one way and then really reversing his position quite drastically towards the end of the film and presenting her in another way.
She kind of flips from being a rather grounded individual, a little bit sexual, into like this Looney Tunes character as they headed on their summer vacation. She devolves, and there's no real reason. A lot of critics said it was so
sharp. It was a very sharp contrast in the film.
But the way that we see it, at least, or we think that Bergman might have been approaching it, is that the movie was told from the point of view of Harry.
So even from the title, Summer with Monika, it's clearly from Harry's perspective, who is the male protagonist in the movie.
Right, and if you take it thinking that, a lot of things sort of explain themselves. One of them being that the first part of the movie, where Monika's a little more subtle, is when Harry sees her as sort of the ideal love of his life. But there are
puppy love. She's charming.
Right.
She's 17 years old. She's sexy in a clumsy kind of way with her little come-ons towards him. Yeah, her seduction. There's a clear arc of seduction that happens throughout the film. And at first it's kind of girlish and clumsy and sweet, and so she is this, ideal, sexually growing up kind of figure in the movie that Harry falls madly in love with. But as the film progresses, her attempts at seduction become much more poignant, and she really drives him, and therefore the story, with her feminine sexuality. So one of the issues that arises in the movie, and one of the criticisms that it later receives, is Monika, from a feminist perspective, is Bergman using her as an object of desire, as a sexualized female character like it is common in film
And as
literature.
critics seem to conclude.
Yeah, some critics. Or is she actually a liberated woman who throws aside, conventional expectations, runs up for her passion and desire, follows what she wants to do, is a love child, free woman, da-da-da-da.
And, we were kind of wishy-washy on this for a while, but it really came down to what is essentially the film's iconic shot. And that comes very late in the movie. How it happens is Monika is sitting there with who we are led to believe is a man she's having an affair with, and everything around her fades to black, except for her face, and she faces the camera and stares at us as an audience. And you had a sort of a really eloquent way to put this.
Well, to me, to be honest, I don't have that kind of confliction with what Bergman is trying to do with the movie or his messaging or whether Monika is a feminist figure or not. I think that she is an experiment for Bergman, and that's part of the reason why her character is so paradoxical. He takes this charming girl, a little bit low class, a little bit crass and rough around the edges, he throws her into the wilderness, and then he shows us how she kind of fends for herself and comes into a more true essence of who she is, I guess.
So we play the voyeur, essentially.
We are the voyeur.
Process.
We're observing her the whole time as she's exploring herself, and exploring Harry and exploring life, and becoming a little bit more savage and crazy. Oddly enough, against this beautiful backdrop by my favorite Gunnar Fisher. But this beautiful backdrop of natural scenes and rolling waters and, birds and beaches, and it's just gorgeous, while she is becoming this monstrous, haggard, grotesque-looking figure. And then we return her back into the city. She becomes completely re-civilized, but she still can't fit in. So part of that savageness stays with her. And what is Bergman trying to tell us? Is he punishing her for casting off that kind of feminine role, or is he liberating her further by not fully integrating her into society?
One thing that you mentioned about the iconic shot is that eventually she comes to face us as an audience.
She does. I think she challenges us. What Bergman really does is he takes Monika outside of the film. She steps outside. She looks directly into the camera, she looks directly into the viewer's eyes, everything else fades. The movie no longer exists. So what we have is us and Monika making eye contact, and she gives us a defiant stare, daring us to judge her.
And I think that a lot of it comes down to the technique of the film, and I think that's what the critics seem to miss. They got stuck on this whole controversial side of things. And Bergman doesn't really spell it out in terms of the plot line. It's all in that style that you mentioned, all in that technique. Of course, as you mentioned before, there is a nudie version of this movie that came out in the US. The original ran at 90 minutes, Bergman's version. The nudie version had new scenes shot of women bathing or something along those lines. And it was spliced down to 62 minutes, including the new bathing scenes. So it's not Bergman's vision in any sense, and it was definitely intended to be more titillating.
Pun intended there, David?
Yes. So question being, is this movie essential Bergman?
I think yes. Obviously not the American version, if you can even find it, but the original Swedish version is pivotal in the sense that at the end of the film he does something that is absolutely new, not only for himself, but I think revolutionary for cinema at the time.
Yeah, and I think it's the first time that we have an iconic shot from Bergman. We've had many that have stood out before, ones that you remember, but this one is
graphic. But this one,
it's a real iconic shot. I think this is essential Bergman, and I feel like we're going to start to see some real development from here on out. But
absolutely, I can confidently say that this is a movie you should see.
All right. Well, I think that wraps up what we wanted to say on this title. We'd like to hear from you guys too, if you check this one out. I know it's been on Hulu, finally. It's finally got a release somewhere in North America.
Exactly.
So comment, let us know what you think, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel.